For the viewers who are less familiar with the fluoride issue, where do you recommend that they go to do their own research? Are there any particular websites that they can go to?
Well, if you Google, you will find hundreds of thousands of fluoride sites around the world. So it can be a little bit overwhelming. That just shows you the level of information that's out there. You know, you have to ask yourself, why are there so many sites out there? 99% of them decrying fluoride, wanting it out, showing the studies, the science, the side effects, the people having the problems. Why? And why isn't anyone listening? It's just something really wrong about that. But a really good one that has very well organized library of information is fluoridealert.org, which is run by Professor Paul Connett. He's an eminent professor with experience in toxicology. And he spent many years now and dedicated his life and retirement now to researching fluoride and all the studies. And he has an amazing library on there which covers most of the aspects and the issues, with other links to follow as well. And it will take you right from the very beginning of where the fluoride is made, how it's made, and the components. You know, it's not just fluoride, but silica fluorides come packaged up with other contaminants such as lead, arsenic, cadmium, radon, mercury. They all come because it's an industrial waste product that they actually dump into the water supply with no processing, straight from the chimneys, repackaged into the water. And so people often don't realise that they're not even getting a pharmaceutical grade fluoride in the drinking water. I mean, that to me is a total insult. And even more worrying is that politicians don't know where the fluoride comes from. They don't. Now, I've just found out we're getting our source from China. So we're getting all their industrial pollutants repackaged for us. You don't know what's in there. Who's tested it? Where are the test results to show what the ingredients are, what it's made up of, how much fluoride is in there and how much other stuff is in there? We don't know. The politicians don't know. Who's running the show here?
Do you know the states that are fluoridating with Chinese fluoride in Australia?
I believe the southern states have discovered that recently they're procuring a product from China. And also North Queensland has found out that their water authorities are purchasing the Chinese product as well.
Right, I believe also
so maybe it's cheaper now.
Yeah, I believe that we're using best quality Belgium fluorosilicate in Queensland water.
Well, that's the way it was promoted in 2008. I don't know if that's the case today. There's a lot of secrecy in government as to what fluoride product is being used. Very difficult to get information.
What about, I've heard also quantum chemicals and also Incitec Pivot. Do you have much knowledge about either of those two?
Incitec Pivot, yes.
In Geelong?
They make the phosphate fertilisers, and they have been a major supplier. But I think it's to do with the pricing. I think that water authorities are always looking to make a bigger profit and to look to buy it in cheaper, and the Chinese sources are much cheaper. And they're following the American lead, and this is sourcing their fluoride, sodium silica fluoride from China has become a big trend in America, which Australian water authorities are now starting to follow one by one. So in the past, we had probably most of our fluoride products coming from local chemical companies, but that's shifting now.
What do you know about sulfuryl fluoride? How does it relate to the total daily fluoride exposure of Australians?
Sulfuryl fluoride, I believe, is a pesticide used in the agricultural industry, and residues of which end up in the plants, in the fruit and vegetables that we buy at the supermarket, and as just another source where we are ingesting and being exposed to fluoride, which adds to the chemical cocktail of what we're consuming. And as I said before, we just don't know how much fluoride is getting into our bodies. No one is measuring it, so how can we make an assumption that everything's all right? Governments need to realize they have to check because no one else is checking. The companies making money out of fluoride are certainly not going to do the checking because they just want to sell more of the stuff. They want to convince more people you need more fluoride because that means more dollars.
Did you know that there are no labelling requirements worldwide for the use of sulfuryl fluoride fumigant, which is of course tasteless and colourless gas? Would sulfuryl fluoride residue remain in flour, grains and dried fruit?
It's highly likely that significant amounts remain because those plants absorb from the atmosphere whatever is sprayed around them. It just doesn't stay on the surface. How much is being absorbed is another question, and there's another reason to include that in a study to be sure of what's in there.
Yeah. Why do you think dentists for the past 50 years have pushed so hard for fluoride? If fluoride is so effective, why have we got a dental crisis?
Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? If what they say was true, that fluoride reduces the incidence of caries, then over the many years they've been putting it into the water, we should be seeing a decline in dental caries, and we should be seeing people with healthier teeth much longer in their lives. But that's not the case. In fact, in fluoridated areas, dentists make more profit than in non-fluoridated areas. And that actually has been documented in the dentist's own statistics, in the Dental Association statistics. So yes, dental fluorosis is a big issue, and funnily enough, before they brought compulsory fluoridation to Queensland, well, I couldn't figure out why my youngest daughter, who hadn't grown up in Queensland with fluoridated water, was getting dental fluorosis. She had the little white flecks appearing on her teeth. And until we started to look at everything she was eating and drinking, and we had the apple juice from the supermarket tested by a local laboratory, and it was found to have 0.7 ppm fluoride concentration, which is just a little bit under the 1 ppm they're putting in the fluoridated water in the southern states. And of course your reconstituted juices and beverages, most of them are made in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, places that use fluoridated water. So it's not just the fluoridated water we drink, but we have to consider the byproducts that are made from that fluoridated water also have extremely high concentrations of fluoride that accumulate. So you have to add up everything you eat and drink.
So with fluorosis, perhaps you could clarify for the viewers, is fluorosis a naturally occurring tooth thing, or is it caused by systemic ingestion of fluoride?
Fluorosis is directly linked to too much fluoride toxicity, and we see that in the white flecks of the teeth, which are part of the skeletal system. So you can bet your life, if you're seeing the effects of fluoride toxicity on your teeth, it's going to be happening inside your bones as well. That's not good and not healthy for your inner health, for your bones.
Have there been any studies done in Australia on bone health in relation to teeth hardening?
I'm not sure about in Australia, but I know overseas there have been bone studies done, and they have linked it with osteosarcoma, and they're in peer-reviewed studies.
I'm just going to ask you some questions for the gaggle of mothers out there that may be concerned with the things that you have raised. As parents, do Do you think it is a parent's right or responsibility to monitor or control what chemicals children ingest, especially relating to medications or drugs? And how do you feel that a chemical's been put in the water that's virtually impossible to prevent your children from ingesting? Do you think we should have a choice in the matter, or are medical authorities correct in making the decision for us to mass medicate? Or are authorities in breach of care by not having monitoring of daily dosage?
Well,
from a parent's angle.
We live in a little bit of a nanny state mentality at the moment, and that everything is decided for you. We decide what's good for you, what's not good for you. You don't have to know or think, just believe and do as we tell you. And that takes away the responsibility of personal health from people. I think we should be able to look into things, to research, to make an informed decision, and to say, I've looked into it, I've looked at all sides, and I believe this is not good for me, and I don't want it, and I don't want it for my children. But the government's taken that right away from us by forcibly dosing the water with a known drug which is linked to cancer and many other diseases and systemic health problems, without our permission, without monitoring it, without checking up. Everything is done on assumption. Who's taking responsibility? When you get sick and you have the side effects and the problems that this creates, who are you going to go to? Who are you going to blame? You did this to me. What are they going to say?
Then I have a forward on that question. How does it make you feel as a parent that you have to discover off your own bat the health dangers of fluoridation, while health authorities in Australia continue to parrot the mantra of safe and effective? How does it make you feel that the state and water supply authorities are untouchable by the law, even if harm is caused? Should they be held liable or accountable for their actions?
Absolutely, and I betcha if they were accountable that they would be singing a different tune, that they would be much more careful, that they would put in place a study to do the checking and the double checking and the triple checking. I assure you, if their bleeps were on the line, they would be a lot more careful. They would think twice. They would not be doing what they're doing. They're only doing what they're doing because they get off scot-free, there are no repercussions, they don't have to take responsibility, it's not their fault, the party told them to say that, the devil made them do it, whatever the excuse is, they're not responsible.